Hello everybody, it's Micah, and today make sure you order some pizza and watch out for foot soldiers because we're making Donatello from Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But first we must pay respects to our commenting overlords, which today is Drama Llama Draws. Your comment is the pepperoni to my pizza that I just can't live without. And with that out of the way, let's take a look at our fabric for this 5-day-long project. We have quite a few different colors this time, including 2 different greens that look almost identical in this lighting, but I promise, I did not spend an extra $12 just to get another half yard of fabric I already had. Next we have some fabulous gold, along with some brown for the plastron. Then we have a deep, rich, vibrant, gorgeous purple, for his battle shell and the like. Then there's a less fabulous purple for his markings and gray for his tag. Let's start off by cutting out all the body bits. Hey, get your mind out of the gutter. We're talking legs, arms, and torsos. And real quick, I do want to touch on how extraordinarily awful the prototyping process for this specific plush was. Mainly the head. I made 9 prototype heads. 9! Each of which took over an hour to make. That's at least 9 prototyping hours for the head alone. And that's why I'd really appreciate it if you smash that subscribe button with the force of somebody who just finished making their 8th prototype head, only to find out that they needed to make another. But seriously, I put a lot of time and effort into making these plushies, and that little button press for you makes a huge difference for me. Back to the task at hand, we have all the pieces cut out for the main body of the plush. Next, we need to pin and sew the limb pieces together. See, Donnie has a lot of detail accessories on him that just wouldn't make sense to make removable pieces from a design standpoint. So his limbs got chopped up into purple sections, green sections, and one little gray section that I had to sew into full arms and legs. Of course, before I could actually sew the pieces together, I had to sew on the details. I personally love it when plushies have lots of different fabrics used for them, so I couldn't pass up the opportunity to have Donnie's screens be vinyl. I made a slushy bear a while back using that same vinyl material for the lid cover, and ever since I just can't stop using it. Then it was time to get to the real sewing. Can't forget to cut off all the excess seam allowance so the pieces are easier to sew together. Then I'll just pop these together so we can move on to the dreaded head. I was seriously just begging the universe to let this work first try. I could not make another head. And as the universe is so fair and kind, I'm sure they'll grant me this one favor. So I got back to work until I reached the point where I could ruin the entire thing. I did a quick Google search for no particular reason, and after scrolling the results, I steeled my nerves and dived headfirst into making this head. Forgive the lighting, it's the lighting of failure and regret. For you see, the universe is not indeed fair and kind, like previously stated, seeing as I put the eyes in the wrong spot. This is because I'm a doofus and always second-guess my measurements. So with an encouraging note written to myself and a fury burning inside, like that of someone who has to start making their 11th head for a plush, I quickly remade the infernal turtle cranium one last time. And with that, day 1 of the Turtle Project came to an end. I started day 2 of this project with my usual piping hot cup of nothing, with the hopes that the worst of this plush making process was in the past. In a half-asleep daze the night before, I had sewn most of the body together and pinned Donnie's shoulder markings on for eternal thread attachment. So obviously the first thing on my agenda was to get those details on so I could close up the body. Body sewn shut, I realized I had forgotten to put in a tag, which usually goes in the side of the plush. But in an unusual twist of fate, my forgetfulness actually helped me out this time, as the tag would have been covered up if I had put it in its usual spot. So instead, it'll go in the side of the soft shell. But the universe isn't quite on my side just yet, as I literally had no tags to go with this plush. So I had to go ahead and make some new ones. I'll save you the anxiety of watching me use an iron, and just know I did not burn my skin off. Then it was time to add the final pieces, those being the feet of course, and turn this bad boy right side too. Now I bet you're thinking, right side too? Doesn't that mean you're about to stuff him? And you'd be right. But your next thought is probably, but the video isn't anywhere near being done, and you'd be right again. That is because this boy is a turtle who's got some complicated shells. Let's start out with hopefully the least complex piece of it, the plastron. The plastron had to be cut into multiple different pieces to get that segmented look that the character's design has. And while not every detail from a character can or should be transferred over to a toy or plush, this is one I felt was really important. Next up, the soft shell. Fun fact about this one, at the very last minute I decided to add these ridges onto the middle of the shell. Just another detail I wanted to try and transfer over from the show, even though it's honestly barely noticeable, especially when the battle shell is finished. And now we sew! At this point, I realized I forgot to change the back of the plastron to have a seam that I could turn it right side too through, so I had to improvise. Then with a lot of wiggling and turning, I got the plastron turned right side out and looking pretty good if I do say so myself. Then I got out my foam and cut some down into just the right size to fit into the finished piece. With the foam in, I was honestly feeling pretty good. I added the plastron onto the main body along with some side bits I made off camera to attach the front of the shell to the back, which coincidentally was what I had to make next. I quickly put that together, turned it right side too, and called it a day. Day 3 was the calm before the storm. I started my day off with a cup of nothing with a candy cane on the side, because it was December when I recorded all this. And then it was time to get to work. This day was all about accessories. His mask, belt, goggles, elbow and knee pads were all on the agenda for the day. All that along with cutting out the pieces for the battle shell, which is probably the most complex plush item I have ever made. But we'll get to that later. For now, it's sunshine and rainbows while I work on the simple accessories. There was so much to cut out on this day that I didn't even get sewing until it started getting dark out. The mask was actually very fun to make. A little tricky in places, but fun nonetheless. Though after I got it turned right side too, I realized it was about 2 inches too long. As we all know, Donnie has those short mask tails that I am not about to mess with. With that taken care of, I placed the mask on the turtle's head to make sure it fit and to mark where the eye holes would go. And while I decided to leave the stressful part of the project for the next day, I did make sure to finish his belt before I called it a night. On day 4, my cup of nothing was getting a little full for my liking, so I chomped down on the definitely real and not a plushie gingerbread cookie, braced myself for the toughest day of this project, and got to work. I started off with the goggles I didn't get to finish the day before, just to ease my way into things. Then it was time for the most complex plush item I have ever designed, the battle shell. I had no more dark purple fabric, and I had a deadline fast approaching, meaning I only had one shot at this. Battle shell had to be made perfectly. You know how the battle shell has those grooves in between a 9 square grid? Well, I was about to make those, and as it turns out, I was about to make them wrong. Thankfully, I was just barely able to recut them to the right size and use a little magic to duplicate my 1 into 3 rows of squishy little squares. I was very proud of these. Now, I mentioned a deadline earlier, and that's because I was making this plush right before my birthday, when I was going to go on a trip to the Mall of America, so I could visit Nickelodeon Universe. And this plush was going to come with me. That is, if everything turned out right. So make sure you stick around to the end of this video to hopefully see this plush at Nickelodeon Universe. On day the next, my cup of nothing seemed a little extra sharp. I really couldn't complain though, as I was about to finish this long hellspawn of a project. I had my 2 pieces of the battle shell and slapped them together. And while one might assume this means the battle shell was almost done, one would be wrong. While the outer shell is done, see, you get it? Shell, battle shell, turtle. Okay, never mind. The outside of the battle shell is complete, but it still can't hold its shape, and that's where the foam comes in. Well, foam and Gorilla Glue. Now, I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to use this inside, but it was winter and I'm an idiot because I thought I opened a window, but really, there was a second pane of glass I didn't notice until after I was done. At the very least, I made sure to tape off the edges of this box I used to save my desk from further damage. Next, I got all my foam pieces out of the battle shell so they could be attached together with excessive amounts of glue. After I had all the main pieces together, I made sure to add on some extra sprays to make sure my lungs were thoroughly coated with chemicals. Then I cut out and pinned all my little squares in place to fit those pockets I painstakingly created for the back of the battle shell. With my fingers completely covered in glue and purple fluff, I decided it was time to do a quick time skip to save you the hassle of seeing me glue more squares together and to save me from having to touch my camera with glue-covered fingers. Once it was all dry, or really more like just not going to get the tacky glue that will probably never dry everywhere, it was time to stuff it into the purple skin of the battle shell. With the anxiety-inducing part over with, it was time to move on to the other anxiety-inducing part, cutting the mask's eye holes. This is another moment where if I screwed this up, it would ruin absolutely everything. Thankfully, it all worked out okay because I trusted my measurements for once. Then we were on to our final step, the hand sewing. And I had to get those pins out of him. They just kept poking me and I couldn't get blood on another plush before they were even finished. There were a lot of pieces to sew onto this plush. I tried my best to make sure as many details are machine sewn on as possible, since it makes a much cleaner stitch. But some plushies just require a lot of hand sewing for their specific designs. I technically could have tried to make a pattern that had all the shell pieces connected, but it would have been a lot more difficult and a lot more prototyping. And with that, we are all done. And now it's time for the glamour shots. Thank you all so much for watching. I know this video was much longer than my previous ones. This project just took a lot longer and had a lot more details. And hey, Donnie did make it to Nickelodeon Universe, and it was a blast. If you made it this far in the video and you'd like your comment featured in the next one, make sure your comment uses the word star. Thank you all so much for watching again, and I'll see you all next time.